And when I was a little girl, I was that kind of kid that never liked to go to bed at night. Maybe you're still that kind of kid, right? And after a while, my parents would win the tug of war, and they would escort me to my bedroom. And there they would turn off the lights, close the door, and with the command, I must rest. So I would wait for a little bit until they were gone, and then I would spring up on my mattress, and it became my stage. And then I would turn my hairbrush upside down, and it became my microphone. And my fantasy of all the fantasies, because you're so young, I'll have to explain who this guy is. There was a guy at the time, back in the day, named Bob Hope. How old are you guys? Anyway, Bob Hope used to travel around the world to the troops, and he would encourage the troops. My fantasy adventure of all, every night I would travel with Bob Hope, encouraging the troops. Guess what? I'm living the dream. My platform continues to expand every day. Who would have thought God would take our story around the world? And you understand our story is just something to grab the attention of people, and from there I get to jump and catapult for their jugular. I get to go for the heart of matters. I do it across the nation, not just in faith-based organizations, but in corporations. It is amazing. People are the same across the board. Government leaders, situation after situation I could tell you about that was just a divine moment. But you know what it is? To discern that moment and take it, seize it. I can remember sitting next to a major governor. Well, I wasn't going to say it was the governor, but I will tell you now. It was the governor. And it was our second event. We were having dinner together. And in the middle of the dinner, he's such a nice guy, Rick Perry. And I turned to him, and I just said, Governor, how's your week been going? And he said, this has been a really tough week. And I said, you don't even seem the same as when we were together before. And he said, man, I've had a lot on me. And he told me a few other things that was on him. And so instead of just turning back to my meal, I turned again to him and I said, hey, Governor. I said, can I have your arm? And instead he turned full face to me and he gave me his hands. And I said, Governor, you've been strategically positioned for this hour. God has brought you to this place. He will equip you. He will give you discernment. And we are praying for you. And then I began to say, may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. What do you think the key thing was at that moment? Oh, yeah, I was there to be a keynote for a big event. You know what the moment was? That moment. And can I just tell you, as visual people, sometimes we overlook that moment. Not long ago, I was a closing keynote speaker for a conference. And at the end of the conference, I had moved back towards the book table. I was going to sign books that night and greet people. And while I was getting back to the book table, a fellow speaker that week, she had spoken earlier, and she's also a friend of mine, she had come by me real fast, and she said, come on, you're going with me. That's the bad thing about not seeing. People take you wherever they want to go. So I said, okay. And so we're briskly walking down the hallway of this beautiful hotel and down the corridor. And when we are walking, I said, now, what are we doing? And she said, you're going to talk to some people. I said, okay. I said, who am I talking to? She said, well, the room down here is filled with soldiers. They're on their way to Iraq in the middle of the night. You're going to talk to them. And I go, okay. I said, do we have permission? And she turned to me and she said, don't you get it? They might not be coming back. I said, yes, I get that. I just want to know if we have permission. And then I thought, okay, here's my cover. I'll say, oh, I'm a blind woman. I'm sorry. I thought this was a convention. You just play the card whenever you need it. So anyway, walked in the room, and sure enough, there were soldiers everywhere, sitting at tables all around the outside of or all along the edge of the restaurant. And so my friend said real loud, she goes, excuse me. This is my friend Gail McWilliams, and she has a few things to say to you before you leave. That was all the preparation. But think about it. I'd been practicing for that moment ever since I was a little kid on my mattress. If you're not careful, you'll overlook what you've really been trained for and what you've been training for. So I can't explain it except that it seemed very casual to step up to a table full of soldiers, and I put my hand on a shoulder of a soldier, And I looked around the room, and then I looked at these guys, and I said, hey, guys, I said, where are you headed? And they said, we're off to Iraq in the middle of the night. And I said, tell me, what's one of your greatest challenges? And they said, leaving home. We hate to leave home. We hate to leave family. Several of them spoke up. And I said, guys, I'm a soldier on the battlefield of another kind. I said, I lost my eyesight having our children. I told them that story. And I even went on to tell him, you know, when I was a little kid, I told him the story I just told you. My fantasy of all the fantasies was to encourage the troops. And I said, and here I find myself now with you, my first literal troop. And I said, may I pray for you? And they said, yes. They took their hats off around the room, and I began to pray for them that God would lead them, give them wisdom, discernment. He would keep them safe. I thanked them for what they were willing to do. And I prayed that God would bring them home to us safely. And when they put their heads up, I said, gentlemen, I fully understand that life costs something. And I said, thank you for being willing to lay down your life to serve us, to serve our interests. And I said, from where I stand looking around this room, I see generals everywhere. And I saluted them. And I said, come home safe. If we're not careful with our eyes of ministry, we'll think the biggest event was on that stage and platform that day to that conference. And if you're not careful and you only live from event to event, you'll miss the opportunities right in front of you that you've been blinded to.